And we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Reality Czars podcast, and I'm your only host today, Nate. Tony, I don't know what the fuck Tony's doing. He's not at work right now, but he's probably like jerking off or something, I don't know, or eating breakfast. So I am happy to be joined by the great Texorcist. Tex, we've recorded, I don't know, at least once or twice before, and we've had audio issues in the past. So,
right.
We're doing it on StreamYard right now, and so I've always had success with StreamYard. Zoom, not so much. So hopefully this goes out. I mean, I think, dude, we were getting onto some heavy, cool ass shit last time. I'm pretty sure the powers that be squashed that shit. I don't know if we're that important or not, but maybe. But Tex, yeah,
seems to always happen with me one way or another. There's always some kind of glitch or something that happens.
Yeah, coincidences, accidents. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, Tex, so I guess this is going to be officially your first time on the show. I'm happy to have you here, brother. Do you want to introduce yourself to our audience a little bit and tell them where they can find you?
Yes. You can reach me at my you podcast it's the Texorcist podcast or Texorcist hyphen podcast.com, and you can reach me on the Texorcist Live on Spreaker, or just do a Google search. I'm on like 250 different platforms. Been on for this year will be 3 years, so it kind of it took off, but then I had some health issues and still going through that. So for the last year and a half, it's been very limited what I put out. So hopefully that'll change very soon. And it's just been a rough go, say the least.
I'm glad you're starting to feel better. I'm glad you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, my friend.
Thank you. I just hope it's not a train, Well,
shit, man. I can't remember all the crazy shit that we had started talking about the last time, because we had General Lee with us. General Lee would have been with us today. He's having internet issues. So, man, I do remember us. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? Because I'm trying to remember where we started and how we got there. Tex, this all culminated in you telling us about your insanely rare blood type and all kinds of crazy shit.
Oh yeah,
that's so fascinating.
Yeah, of course, I've always been like whenever I was born, I was like a weird kid, just different. I always saw things, differently, outside of the box, or whatever you want to say. And it was like I've taken different tests now that last 10, 15 years. And what was shocking is I would I scored pretty high on the autistic spectrum, but it's the functioning, and it's like,
don't we all, man? I'm pretty sure I'm autistic too.
Yeah, it's like, and it made sense, because I had always just seen things differently. People saw me a bit different and everything. But then back in I got married in 97, and my wife and I at the time, we were trying to have children, and couldn't. She just had one miscarriage after another. So we went to see her fertility doctors and geneticists and everything, and they took our blood, and did genetic tests, and hers, came back fine. Mine came back. They opened the test results, and they were pretty shocked. And they said your blood type. They said it's very rare. And I said, how rare? And they said the most rare. It turns out that my blood type is Rh null, which there's only been like 15 people since 1961, since it was discovered, that's had that blood type. And I'm sitting there going, okay, wow, I always knew I was different, but man, that's that's a little much. I mean, it's like there's like 9 people on Earth that have this blood type, and so then they opened my genetic test, and they were sitting there, and he says, "I'm sorry," he said, "but your test has been compromised some way." I'm like, really? He says, yeah. He says, we're gonna have to do another test. He says, I don't know how this happened. He says, but this is just, he said, this has been compromised. He said, it's just, it's just all over the place. He said, we'll do another one. We'll get things straightened out. And he says, and then you can come back next week and we'll have the, results. So we went back, and it was this, doctor and wife. They were both doctors. It was a team. Their nurse and this guy that was their mentor was a geneticist in Chicago that they were in contact with and everything. And they called him, or they faxed him back then for the really, really difficult questions or whatever. And so they opened my test results, and every one of them jumped back in their seats. I mean, it was like they saw the devil, or, it's like something really scared them, especially the nurse. She gasped out loud, and her eyes just got real big. And I said, what is it? And, male doctor, he says, oh, nothing. I said, no. I said, I saw that. I said, I saw you. And I pointed to the nurse, and I said, I saw you. I said, what scared you? And she wouldn't tell me. And he says, this makes no sense. He says, I've never seen anything like this. And I said, what? And he says, your test results are the same. He said, this can't be. And I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, you don't know me. Oh, yeah, it can be. And so he says, do you mind if we take like 30, 45 minutes? He said, I'm going to send your test results to our mentor in Chicago. And this guy was older, I say older. I'm in my 50s now. So he was 60, back then he was older. And so they sent it to him. And, when they came back, they said, I said, well, what's the answer? And he says, I have to admit to you, he says, when we sent it to him, he said, he called us and said, that's good, says, but you didn't get me. And he said, what? He says, you're joking. And he says, no, this is no joke. He said, no, he said, he said, it's a joke. He says, you can come clean with me. He says, no, he says, I swear. He says, this is no joke. He says, the man whose test results you have is sitting in my office right now with his wife, waiting for some answer. And he said that the geneticist told him, said, if this is not a joke, then the one sitting in your office is not a man. Now, when you hear some shit like that, I was sitting there and I'm like, this is like a dream. It's like something you would dream, but it wasn't. It was real. And my wife's looking at me like, is there something you haven't told me? And, it's like, hey, you knew I was different when I married you, you know, and which was one of the things that, you know, that attracted her to me, you know, is because, you know, I was different. And but I tell you, man, when that happened, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. I mean, they were no longer friendly. They were no longer, you know, the handshaking and the, you know, closeness was not there. They kept their distance from me. And I swear they, all three of them were looking at me like they were looking at an alien gray or something sitting there. It
Well,
was
they
no
might
longer,
have.
was no more smiles, no more hospitality. I mean, it was like I was a threat to them, and they were afraid of me. And it's like, so I just asked him because he was the only one talking. The other two, the nurse and his wife, they just went silent. I mean, they just went silent, and all they could do was stare. And I'm thinking, okay, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? You know? And he said, your blood type is the most rare in the world. You know, and he started explaining it to me. He says, your blood, he says, can be transfused, can be transferred to anyone, even animals. He says, but you can only receive your type of blood. He said, so if you were in an accident or something, he says, you would be screwed unless you've banked your blood. And I
Do
said,
you do
well,
that?
I don't plan on, you know, being in any accident. And,
Well,
you
nobody
know,
plans on accidents.
right. I was being funny when I said that, you know, trying to break the ice, you know, and, but he said, yeah, he said, it would be a good idea for you to do that. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but you know, what if I did it and, you know, my blood went missing or something, you know, that wouldn't be good. So, so he said, this was like, I was in the Twilight Zone, or, you know, I was expecting Rod Serling to step out and say, yes, Shane Moore has no idea the shit he's in right now. You know? At any moment, soldiers wearing hazmat suits are going to bust through the walls with rifles and take him in. I'm like, yeah, that was another thing. That's what made us leave finally. But which I mean, after what the doctor told me from a distance, I told my wife when he left the room again, I said, I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I said, it would not surprise me. I said, if in a few minutes, I said, if, you know, men, you know, soldiers came in with, you know, hazmat suits or whatever, I said, heavily armed, and told me that I was going to go with them. And she said, yeah, she said, I'm not feeling too comfortable either. So we left. But
Good
what,
call, man. I don't
but
trust that kind of shit.
no. And what he told me is he said, I said, what is the deal? And he says, the deal is, he says, you've got the most rare blood type. He says, but compared to your genetic test, your genetic markers and makeup, he says, your blood test is, he said, is nothing compared to that. And I asked him, I said, well, you know, what do you mean? He says, what I mean is, and he started, you know, just beating around the bush. And I said, you can tell me, I can take it, you know, just tell me. And he says, okay. He says, there is no medical, there's no biological, and there's no known scientific. He says, by all biological, medical, and scientific standards, he says, there is no way that you could be classified as human. He says, now you look human. He says, but I'm talking about, he says, your genetics, what you're made of. He said, it's simply not human. He says, because he says, there's no way that I can even make anything out of your two test results. And he says, and they're both identical. He said, it's like everything has been twisted and turned, and he said, and upside down and inside out. And I said, okay. I said, if I'm not human, I said, then what am I? And keep in mind, this is a doctor I'm talking to. It's I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. He's he and his wife, they're the leading fertility doctors in the world. I mean, they treat people from all over the world. This is in Dallas Fort Worth, and so I mean, this guy's not a novice. And I said, well, if I'm not human, then what am I? And he looked at me and he says, we simply don't know. He said, but I have never seen anything like this. And I said, so I can't have children. And he says, no, you can have children. He says, but only with a woman like you. And he said, and that would be like finding one grain of sand in all the beaches of the world. And I said, so you're telling me that I can't have children? And he says, well, unless you find a woman like you. And so that's the most painful thing about it, is because of that, I was never able to have children.
I'm sorry, Tex. Yeah, that sucks.
You told me that it is usually, I get this, it's like I'm the first one that they have ever encountered. And I have looked this up online for years and years and years, trying to find some story, some experience like mine, but I've never found it. It is always the woman who is RH negative, that when a positive man impregnates her, her body will usually terminate the pregnancy if she doesn't get ROGAM shots to counteract it. But there are men that are RH negative that impregnate women who are RH positive, and there's no problem. But with me, they told me, they said, any woman that you impregnate, they said, her body is going to terminate that pregnancy, because it will view the fetus as foreign, as alien. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't have to use that word, But then I looked at my genetic results, and it says origin unknown. It says origin unknown alien / alien. And I'm thinking, do you have to keep using that word? It's like, yeah, probably, the medical term for unknown would be alien. But in this case, do you have to really use that term? Because I was already feeling like an alien gray, or, it's like, man. But yeah, that's, there's been, a lot of other, things that have happened that it's just very, very strange. And there's this project, this government project, supposedly. Now I don't know what to make of it, but there's not much about it online, but it's called Project Oak Tree, and that's where the government supposedly keeps tabs on people that have RH negative or RH null blood. And the reason is because this was said that it was because they thought that these people were the descendants, or had the lineage of the Nephilim spoken of in the Bible, Genesis 6.
Well, see, this is where I was going to move to next and talk to, because maybe this blood type isn't as rare as they say it is. Maybe it's only found in certain family trees. So maybe this. So I've definitely heard this, right? So you know how like the
Mm-hmm.
whole 23andMe, that whole those genetic tests that they're
Those
giving
are
everybody.
fronts. Those
They're
are
fronts.
fronts.
Yeah, absolutely. By mega fucking crazy corporations that are tied to the government, like tied to DARPA and
CIA,
the CIA.
NSA.
Exactly. And so it's not necessarily that they're not like trying to tell you where you are, or, where you're from or this or that. They're trying to get a database on people and they're looking for something. They're looking for certain genetic markers, certain ties, or maybe even a specific person. And I'm not saying you are Jesus,
Right.
Texorcist, clearly, but
Right.
just they're looking for someone or something.
Well,
And so there's so many interesting questions that we can ask ourselves about this. So, um, yeah, like you said, so so this is where I get. Anyways, sorry, you go ahead, and because I have so many thoughts. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tex.
my father is B positive, and my mother is a positive, but they could both have the recessive, you know, gene, the negative recessive gene. But as far as the null, now that's very, it's very, very strange. I mean, it's very well. I mean, I told you there's only been like less than 15 people since 1961 when it was discovered. But what what happened during my childhood when I was like in first grade, I can remember these two men that would come to our house, and they said that they were the um, from the school for I was like in gifted classes and stuff, and with the magnet program, which later turned out, 20 years later, it came out that the magnet program was a CIA front to keep tabs on gifted children, special children, that showed a high level of intelligence and imagination and everything. So, but they were always dressed the same. They weren't like Men in Black. They wore like brown suits, but they would always come in the same car to my house, and they'd come in and they would say, "Okay, we've got these coloring books for Shane, um, and even at that age, I could see that there would be one that would be talking to my mom and one that would be watching me, wouldn't take his eyes off of me. And I'm thinking, okay, um, these these guys are not on the up and up. And even at that age, as a little boy, I'm sitting there going, yeah, you think you're observing me, but I'm observing both of you. I know what's up. One of you's taking notes, like mental notes of everything I'm doing, and one of you has my mom distracted, and and then they started showing me these coloring books, and even at that age I was like, yeah, that's about as interesting to me as watching a snail crawl. I don't want to color those books, and everything. So they said, well, if you color these and you stay in the lines, and they said, then when we come back next week, you can choose what prize you get, what reward you get. And there were like these little cameras and little dinky things, like telescopes and stuff, I was thinking, yeah, I really don't want any of those things, It's like so so what happened was when they would leave, my mother would color the books. I never touched them. And they'd come back and they'd be, oh, that's good. That's good. What do you want? I'd be like, I don't care, give me the camera or whatever. And so, but later, this was in 2008. Get this, 2008. I'm online and I'm doing research on, um, I'll just say portals, interdimensional portals. And, it's like, are those real? Yeah, they're real and they're not real, you know. And that's one thing that I have come to learn, come to find out, is that with so much of this, it is real but it's not real. It's simultaneously real and unreal, because we have been indoctrinated to view everything as physical. And I've got news for you. You're not physical. I'm not physical. No one's physical. And nothing on this earth is physical. Earth itself is not physical. And I'll get back to that later if you'll remind me. I mean, um, but the spiritual is, or that's just a word for non-physical is what I'm trying to say. It is real. So if someone asks me, do portals exist? Yes, they do. But as far as what you view as physically, no, they don't. Because like if you went to a portal and you entered it, your body would not go through the portal. You would, but your body wouldn't. Your physical body wouldn't. Now I don't know how to explain that. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I don't know how to explain that, but it has something to do with your consciousness. Now, if we hadn't been indoctrinated to believe that we're physical, then I believe that what we believe is physical would go through it. But because we view ourselves as being solid, as being physical, that's left behind, and the consciousness goes through. But more on that later. But I was researching these portals around the planet and everything, and there's 12 that I'm found or learned of, and then there's a 13th that's like the master portal that get this, the portal that controls all the other portals. Now think about that. In the Lord of the Rings, there was the one ring that controlled all the other rings.
It's always 12 and 1. Isn't that interesting?
That is. It's always 12 and 1. It's always 13, and one always has to go, but it returns. In the Old New Testament, Joseph, the coat of many colors, Joseph, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, Joseph was sold by his brothers, sold into slavery, and then they went to Egypt, and they found out Joseph was still alive, so he came back. And then you have Jesus and the 12 disciples. Jesus had to go, crucified, but then he came back. It's always the greatest one. It's always the most spiritual one, the most anointed one, or that goes away, but they come back, and that's what this portal, the 13th portal, is just like the zodiac. There's the 12, and then there's always the invisible, which is Ophiuchus, the serpent handler, and it's between the Sagittarius and Capricorn, I believe, or maybe Scorpio. But it's one of those that, and it just so happens that I was born December 2nd. So guess what? I'm Ophiuchus if you count the 13th, zodiac, the hidden zodiac. And but in 2008, I was doing this, researching these portals, and I wasn't thinking, and I had them like backed up in tabs, and next thing I know, I watched my laptop go dark from top to bottom. It just goes black, and my cell phone rang, and it said hidden number or whatever it says, and so I answered it because I thought, man, that's so weird, because it was like black goo, just it was like a line, but it went slowly like molasses, just ooh, and just went off. And then my cell phone rang exactly. And I'm thinking, damn, am I in the Matrix? Because, when Neo's sitting there at the computer and his computer goes off and then his cell phone rings just like that. And there again, I'm thinking, this is like I'm in a dream. So I grabbed, and I answered it, and I said, hello. And this is, Mr. Moore, we know what you're doing. And I'm like, what in the hell? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and this person got this German accent, really strong, really heavy German accent. And I said, what I'm doing? I said, I'm not doing anything. I said, ha ha, funny, funny. He says, this is no joke. And I said, well, yeah, right. I said, who is this? And he says, this is Special Agent Frankfurt. And I almost like cracked up, And I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's good. I said, but, and then he says, we're not joking. And I said, and there was something in his voice. I could just tell that this dude was not joke. I mean, he was the real deal, And so I said, okay, give me your credentials. And boom, 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 boom. He named them off, his clearance, his number, and all kinds of shit. I'm like, okay. I said, and he says, we can be on your doorstep in 10 minutes and take you in. And I said, well, come on. And to this day, I don't know why I said that. I was like, oh man, why did I say that? And he says, I said, but you and I both know that we don't want that. And he says, yes, you're correct. And I'm like, okay, how did that ever happen? Like, what's the deal here? And so I asked him again. I said, could you give me your, credentials again? And boom, 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 he named them off. And he was spot on. I mean, exactly. And I said, are you with the government? I said, are you with, the lettered agencies? And he says, oh, no, no, no. He says, we have no name. He says, we're not, not part of the government. He says, think bigger. And, what he meant by that was global. And I'm like, man, how did I get into this? And he says, what are you doing looking up what you're looking up? And I said, I was just trying to find a vacation spot and everything. He says, no, no, you aren't. We know what you're doing. We've been monitoring you for a very long time. And I started thinking back to that school when I was like first grade. And that's part of it, is that magnet program. And that's what he meant. And I'm thinking, oh man. And he told me my mother's name, her maiden name. He told me my social security number. He told me blah, blah, everything that only, things that I would only know, and have. And it was like he was going through a file, and I could hear a lot of sound like computers and some kind of machinery in the background. And I could hear other, people talking this German accent. And I said, so are you the only one? He says, no. He says, we have Special Agent Berlin, Special Agent Munich. And I said, oh, so you got your names from, German cities. I said, wow, that's original. And he said, we just want to make sure you're keeping your nose clean. And I'm like, yeah. I said, well, why aren't you out, harassing somebody else? And he says, well, because you know much more than the average citizen. I'm like, well, okay. And so there was a lot more said, but anyway, he told me, he says keep your nose clean. He says we just had to make sure that that you're that you're towing the line or something, now. He says, but we'll be seeing you in the future. And I said, I know. And I don't know why I said that. And he hung up, and my computer came back on. So that's 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 really something that sticks with you for a long time. And just knowing that they can basically get to you anytime, any place they want. I mean, so
That's fascinating, man. This whole thing is super interesting and fascinating with your genetics and things, because like I go back and forth with like the whole alien thing, with the whole like all of these different things, because I feel like this is all sort of a simulation. I feel like this is generally where my mind goes, that like any type of alien or so sort of interdimensional beast, or it's interdimensional. I feel like we can't physically get to these other places with like I feel like a lot of it is like inside of ourselves. Like I think that we
right,
can connect to these places, and like maybe the portal is right here, or right here.
exactly,
But what is fascinating is like having your genetics be basically alien proves that there has to be something physical to this, right?
right,
That's super fascinating, because like so at one time, and so maybe that was the Garden of Eden, or like before, like when maybe the Garden of Eden was not necessarily exactly what it says in the Bible, or something like that, but
exactly
let's
right,
talk about it in a way that like that was a time when the veils were thinner. Maybe that's when the spiritual or like the other dimensions could touch here physically, because I find it fascinating, the idea that like, because they say that the watchers, or those angels who I'm convinced of are interdimensional,
right.
or in a different dimension, were able to physically have sex with women here and have babies,
Well,
and so
one thing about the Garden of Eden, you're spot on about that, is that it says, and God planted a garden in the east of Eden. Well, the east is always on the right, which is the right hemisphere of your brain, which is it's the spiritual, it's the artistic, it's the it's the it's the loving, the forgiving, the musical. The left brain is the monitoring, the judgmental, the rule keeping, and it's the direct opposite of the right brain. And just like when Jesus was on the cross, it says that Jesus that the thief, get this, on the thief on the left side said he deserves the same thing that we're getting. And the thief on the right said, no, he doesn't. He's done nothing wrong. Shut your mouth and leave him alone. And Jesus looked at the thief on the right and said, today you'll be with me in paradise. That's talking about the right brain and left brain.
That's fascinating, man. I mean, I just, it gives me an idea as far as like, because I know they've backed off of this now, but for the longest time, like for most kids, if they were showing any inclination to being left handed, they'd get their hands smacked, and they
Right.
would force them to use their right
Mm-hmm.
hand,
Mm-hmm.
which
Well,
is connected to the left brain,
right.
the left side of your brain. And so they didn't want, I mean, they can say different things
Well,
like, well, the world was made for right-handed people, but
well,
maybe there's something
actually,
deeper to that.
actually, actually, what is deeper about that is that when you're left, the left-handed people are said to be in their right mind because it crosses.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if they were using their left hand, they didn't want them to tap into their right brain.
Exactly. That's exactly my thoughts. Yeah.
And
They didn't want any of that.
but but with Jesus on the cross between the two thieves, this is something that has boggled my mind since I was like a teenager. Is if you read Roman history, tell me where you find where the punishment for stealing was capital death. I mean, the death penalty. It's not there. But the Bible says plainly that they were thieves. The reason is the writers wrote that so people would say, wait a minute, you mean they're killing them for stealing stuff? That makes no sense. You're right, it doesn't. That's why we wrote it like that, so people would dig deeper and find out that, yeah, that's talking about the thieves of your left brain, right brain, or more than that, your right eye and your left eye, what you see, what you lust after, what you want, and what's put in front of you. Those are the thieves. And but Jesus said to the thief on the right, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." He didn't say that to the thief on the left. And what that tells me is that heaven or paradise is a state of mind.
Yeah, that's a fascinating concept. Like, as I've had that conversation with people, especially, like, I think that there is a lot to Gnosticism, but the whole idea that like this is a prison planet and we're stuck in hell right now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, this is a pretty awesome hell. If this is hell, this is a pretty fantastic prison. I mean, because in this, and so that maybe goes, to an outlook, right? And that's
Well,
like what you make of it. Because to
right.
me, I live in a beautiful area. I get to plant like fruit trees in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
I get to, like, dude, I'm like 10 minutes from a river. Like, I love this place.
Mm-hmm.
I love it here. You can make this place heaven, or you can make this place hell.
Mm-hmm. And we are programmed from birth to make it hell.
Are we?
Well. When the Bible says, the original sin, or we were born in sin. It has nothing to do with a literal sin. What that means is that when we're born, when every person's born, their left brain is dominant, and what is it is ego driven, and what the key is you have to get to a point to where that you take the right brain, the spirit, to where the ego is put into submission to the spirit. Because when you're born, the ego is your spirit is in submission to the ego. And when the Bible talks about Satan, the Satan is not a name; it's a word. It's a Hebrew word meaning adversary or accuser, but mainly adversary. Okay, the Satan is ha Satan in Hebrew, and it means the adversary. And the Jewish rabbis will tell you in a heartbeat that Satan adversary can be any adversary. It can be the IRS, it can be the government, it can be your job, your boss, whatever. But the Satan that people say, well, that's the devil, that's the one out to destroy mankind. Well, yes and no, but it's not what people think. The adversary is the ego, that me, that part of us that wants me first, wants my pleasure, wants to feed me, wants to give me my desires. And
well, that concept of the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so it's that constant battle between the two.
That's right.
Okay.
And it is when the Bible says your adversary, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Well, that's true. Your ego, if it's unchecked, if it's not kept in control, it will destroy you.
You know, it's fascinating, Tex. Rethink about that story of Jesus in the desert for 40 days. And at the end of that, he is having to choose, like Satan comes to him and is making him choose. He's like, I could give you all this wealth and power if you will worship me, if you will worship the ego, if you will.
His own ego.
Yeah. And he said, no, it's not worth it. Like he goes, what is it worth? That I get all of these things and then I forfeit my soul. And then, that's an interesting thing. If you look through the Bible through that lens, you start looking. Yeah, it's fascinating to re-look through the Bible with that lens.
Once the Bible talks about the key of David, like in Psalms or something like that, but it reference it says the key of David. Once you have that or whatever, and what the deal is when you think about it, what does a key do? It unlocks. And I believe that is talking about the key that unlocks what is written in Scripture to where you see it for what it is, and you can decipher it, and you can cut through all the metaphors, all the symbolism, all the allegories, and you get the real, truth. Because if you read it on, face value, it's a fairy tale. I mean, plain and simple, it's a fairy tale. I mean, but if you dig and you go deeper and you search these things out, you'll find the treasure, and it's powerful. It's very powerful. Like it holds truths that are so advanced that is the only way that they could be passed on is by these parables and these stories and these metaphors, and because like if they shot from the hip and just told us, we wouldn't get it. It would go over our heads, and that's really something about the temple when Jesus was in the wilderness, and it says that the devil came to him and said, these stones become turn these stones into bread. You're hungry. Well, that's the physical, and then he says, take yourself up on the throw yourself down from the temple, and you'll draw people to you. That's, fame, and then the last was fortune, and so it was like the three main things of the ego that feed the ego. And so that's powerful. It really is.
Yeah, man, that's fascinating. Do you want to circle back now? You were talking about the world that we live in isn't physical, but spiritual.
Oh, right. Well, it's the let's see, it was Einstein, talked about Einstein and Schrodinger, and they all basically, they got down to Schrodinger's cat. It's like if he's in a box and there's a cyanide capsule that can break, but you don't know if it's broken or not, and it's released, that whether or not the cat is not dead or alive until it's observed. It's like, literally, I mean, if you think about it, is the cat dead or is the cat alive? Well, until you open the box, until you lift the box, it's both, really. It's both dead and alive. And that's pretty deep, but it's true. And so Schrodinger was saying your consciousness has so much power that until that box is lifted, that cat is both alive and dead. And only when you open it does it become real, dead or alive. Okay, well, Einstein was talking about the double slit experiment where they shot light particles through this steel plate that had two slits in it, and they noticed that the particles seemed to be choosing which slit it was going to go through, and just like it had like it was making a choice. And so this went back to Einstein, and he says there can never be a test, can never be an experiment that is not compromised. He said, you're never going to do it. And he says the reason is because the observer, the act of observing it, affects the outcome. Your consciousness affects the outcome of any test, of any experiment. And so it wasn't the particles, the waves that were becoming particles and vice versa, that were having conscious thought or making conscious decisions. It was the observers that they didn't even realize they were doing it. And when you look up, and we're all taught atoms make up the world. Everything's made of atoms. You, me, couch, the wall, houses, the earth itself is made up of atoms. Okay, but if you do an in-depth research and study on the atom, you'll find that the atom is 99.99% empty. Matter of fact, it's even more than that, because it cannot even be actually classified as being solid or even existing, because they're so empty that they disappear and reappear.
They phase in and out.
Right. And when they do, I believe that they're going to other dimensions. And then they're returning just for like a split second or whatever. But still, when you think about it, how does something become, how does a board or a brick, how is that solid when what it's made of is 99.99% empty? It's because when, let's say your couch, for instance, or the wall behind you, when you're not observing it, it's not there. It is not there, and or it is a probability. It's a possibility, and it's there as waves. It's there as like a blueprint. But until you turn around and observe it, then it becomes particles. Then it becomes solid. It's just like a video game. And I remember being in San Antonio on vacation back in like '99, and they they had the first virtual, reality games where you put the headset on and everything. And I remember, playing that for like 5 minutes. It was like $25 to do it. And it was so cool. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I was walking and I turned around really fast. And when I did, it was blank, but then it quickly filled in with pixels, filled in, to make the game, the virtual game. And so I was telling the guy about it, afterwards, and he says, yeah, he said, this is a really vast game. And he says, when one, section's not being played or not being observed, he said it shuts off, shuts down. But when it's played or when it's entered, he said it activates. And and later on, when I read this, about the observer making, basically you make it real. I'm thinking that's just like that virtual reality game. It's like, I turned around too fast and it had to fill in, but it filled in because if it's not being played, then it shuts down to conserve energy, power.
That's fascinating, man. And our consciousness and our belief in this being a physical place is that what makes this a physical place when I turn around and now this wall exists?
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating, dude. Tex, this has been a fucking fascinating conversation. We need to do it again. I'm sorry, I got to run to church right now.
No problem.
Tex, thank you so much for coming on, man. Yeah, let's definitely do this again. Yeah, dude, I could pick your brain for hours. Dude,
well,
this is a fun fucking...
well, I definitely enjoyed deep conversation, and anytime.
Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate it. Tex, I hope you're feeling better. I'm so glad you were able to record with us. And yeah, man, you're welcome on anytime. And if you need anything, holler at me.
Okay, same with you, brother.
All right, man. I'm going to hit the outro.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.